because that's personal responsibility, is saying, figure out what this actually means and use discernment and your guidance on this, and the picture will inform. And typically it's not what the media is saying.
So when you say it like that, it sounds like there's a purpose in your developing of the skill to create that picture. So, like if I were to just to tell somebody, fix my lawnmower and figure it out, well, it's less about having the lawnmower working than it is about giving someone an opportunity to figure out how that machine works. And that's the way you're making it sound. Is that right? There's a value to you, Nigel, that the guides are saying, we want you to just spend more time with this to understand it deeper, as opposed to being more like object oriented. We have a task to be done.
Right. I think using that metaphor of the lawnmower, it's like saying, we want to mow the lawn.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. There's a lawnmower. Okay. Lawnmower's broken. Okay. We can either show you how to fix it, or you can figure it out how to fix it. There's more to it than that. I had it a moment ago. So yeah, I've lost that train. It'll come back to me.
Okay.
Yeah. So whatever, just that link just broke there. So, I can try and fake it.
I thought.
I can fake it till I make it. That's not going to help. Okay.
Right. So something else I was wondering about was when you see these issues of okay, so you have like this population of humans.
Oh yeah, sorry. Okay, that thread came back. Let me just jump in.
Okay.
That thread came back. It's about, Nigel, first of all, know your own limitations, know your strengths, know what you're good at, know your limitations, and then take responsibility for using both wisely. Like if you gave a lawnmower to a mechanic and said, fix it, there'd be no problem. He'll fix it within 5 minutes. You give it to someone like me, I might destroy the thing and lose all the bolts and nuts and have this whole box left over afterwards and a lawnmower not working. So I'd have to go and learn very closely, and that's my limitation, saying I don't know how to fix a lawnmower. Let me go and figure that out, and not think I can fix a lawnmower. However, I may be good at something else, whereas the mechanic is not. So it's actually owning our strengths, owning what we're good at, recognizing that we're not an expert at everything, that when the news comes across, just because a news channel says it's like this, was I there at the event? No, I wasn't. Do I know the people personally in the event? No, I don't. Do I know what's the surroundings of the event? No, I don't. So why should I believe that what the little slice I'm given is the truth? Why on earth would I believe that? And sit back and wait for the other pieces to come in, like the instruction manual of the lawnmower, how to fix it, to come in, and then create a complete lawnmower using that metaphor. Okay, so about personal responsibility.
Yeah, I mean, I would have assumed that if you're asked to, as staying on this metaphor, if you're asked to fix the lawnmower, that event or that kind of experience would only be presented if it were a reasonable possibility as a challenge. But like I might be asked to fix a lawnmower, but I really hope I'm not ever asked to unclog someone's aorta, something that's way above my reasonable skill level. So do you feel like that, how do you think about that in terms of these various challenges of understanding that spirit presents to you? Is it something that you would feel okay declining, or that or that you're supposed to take that challenge?
Trying not to answer it as a black and white question. who am I, or who are you, or who are any of us to limit who we believe we are?
Mm.
Okay. On the corollary of that, though, is how do we guard against being a braggart, egomaniac, and saying, well, I can do open heart surgery because I've fixed the lawnmower. It's acknowledging I can't do this. How do some of these healers work? They almost blindfold and they go and do the psychic surgery. What is it that's working through them? If it's working through them, why should I limit myself to say that they may not be the same, similar, or different, but equally powerful entities or energies working through me? So it's just sitting in that. It's sitting in the being uncomfortable in the unknown and in the possibility that everything is possible, but not allowing the ego to take over and say, I can do this, not stepping into a place of folly, but a place of presence and a place of in the now, in the moment. It's kind of, yeah, it's not a cut and dry sort of answer or question.
Yeah. No, I get that. So you're kind of, if I'm understanding, saying it's less about your self being the individual ego tackling a problem and whatever that accomplishment might be, as much as almost letting the ego step to the side so that the intelligence asking for the solution is coming through.
Yeah, that'd be a nice way of putting it. And on top of that, never ever claiming it as my own. Acknowledging that this presence is working through me, and for that is huge gratitude, but never claiming that as my own knowledge or wisdom. Because if you do that, my experience has been spirit just steps back again. So yeah, you're too dangerous to work with.
Well, the implication of I own this is separateness, right? Because if this is ours and we are one, then there's that. But if it's I own this, then you're saying basically I'm here and whatever else is over here. So you're forcing that division, right, between you and spirit.
I hear what you're saying there, because the way I'm hearing you use the word I is about me as this separate human entity or little avatar running around with my intelligence, my wisdom, and my ego. That's how I hear you use the word I.
Right.
When we step through that to the big I, or part of the collective consciousness, or the God self, whatever you want to call it, that's a different I. And for me, and that again, go back to that model at the top there, where the purpose is I am one with, whatever you want to call it. So how do we transition from the little I, which is a separateness, a meaningless down here, to the big I, which is over there? It's that transition. And for me, I think that the key to that is one of awareness. Where am I coming from? Am I coming from throwing my toys out the cot? I'm not sure that's an expression you Americans use. Okay. or spitting the dummy we use as well. I think you call it the pacifier. And saying, I know the answer. I am right. And that's a separateness.
Right.
To being in that, having the awareness of saying, is this something which is just an absolute knowingness without a shadow of doubt? It's just there. However, what do I need to do with that? And the answer might be nothing. Or it may be you need to bring that in through ruthlessness, going back to the shamanic term of ruthlessness here, and impose that, or you need to do nothing. Again, it's in the moment. And I think you're a martial artist. You know that place of, when you're in that place of stone coldness or the place of pure presence, you know exactly how to flow with that energy through you. You don't rationalize it. You don't think about it. You don't think, is that right? Is that wrong? Am I going to hurt the person? Do I do this? You just do it because that's what is called for in the moment.
Hmm.
It's that kind of discipline, which, people who do martial arts will have an advantage over those who don't.
And dancers, like basically anything that helps you to be in the moment, the skill of improvisation. So you kind of already answered this, but I wanted to just articulate this question more specifically. When we look out at the world and we see, this crisis that you were talking about, and I think that's very real. A lot of people see that. How do you decide where to go about dealing with that crisis? Is that an intervention in the community, or is that something that needs to be worked through internally, or both?
I think the crisis playing out in front of us is really the crisis playing out within each of us.
Mm.
If you don't have that internal crisis, there won't be a crisis outside. You imagine, John Lennon, when was it that he sung Imagine, wrote and sung that song? Going back quite a long time ago.
Mm.
And he was shot for it and killed. So, but if each of us embody and embrace, I haven't known one person who doesn't love that song and almost weeps when they hear it. If we all have that same reaction to that song, why is it so hard for us to individually live that?
Mm.
What is preventing us? And who is preventing us? And for what purpose? Because the collective energy is, that song represents it to me anyway, that collective energy, that beauty in that. The imagine a world without borders, without boundaries, and so on. But something prevents that, is to say, okay, let me go into the stillness. Because we know the answers. He wrote about it, he sang them. But the question is, what is preventing us from going there? Or who is preventing us from going there? And why are they or it, the AI element, infiltrating this planet? What do we do about that? That is exposing itself more and more and more as an infiltration force and not part of humanity. And how do we awaken to that and say, no, I'm going to lift my vibrational frequency so high enough that you no longer have an impact upon me. If you do that, they can't survive. They'll die. They feed off low vibrational frequency. It's that concept of loosh energy. I'm not sure if you're familiar with loosh, Loosh. It's a low vibrational frequency we give off when we're in fear, anxiety, anger, resentment. It's a low vibrational frequency humans give off, and these entities live off that. That's what they thrive off. And
so, sorry, go ahead.
Carry on with the question.
Well, so being that we have free will, there must be something that we're getting by staying in the low frequency, right? It's like, why, if it's as clear as you're making it sound, then everybody would choose to be at their peak frequency all the time. But what's the carrot or the stick to keep people in low frequency?
Again, on that body of work, which I wrote about, it's that as a child, that we are conditioned right from birth onwards to conform and comply to others' wishes. And the incentive for that, we stay alive. If we don't, we'll die. That's quite a strong incentive. And so we're trained from that, and we have no idea why we're doing that. We just know we have to do it. And then once we're in that place of conformity compliance, we become malleable and controllable by the elements of the matrix, being governments, schools, religious institutions, all those bodies which make up the matrix, and feeds off that as that control mechanism. There's, we know that there's these exceptional people being incarnated, have been the last couple of decades, who are awake to this. And they say no, and they just won't go into and conform. They're the danger to society, according to the matrix. They're the ones to be outcast at whatever cost. we know a lot of more and more of us are waking up saying, hang on, no, they're actually the ones who get it. We've been sleeping all this time. We're now finally waking up. And I'll be curious. I haven't got the answers here because I'm not showing it. I'll be curious to know, what will our true leaders in the future look like?
Mm-hmm.
Who will they be?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. Who will they be? What will, literally, what will they look like, and who will they be, and how will we recognize them?
This reminds me of a theme, something that I had talked about in the past, which was how the rite of passage has been basically evaporated from our culture, because the way, and correct me if I'm wrong, so from birth up until present, for most people, we go through this period of conformance and compliance because we need to feel accepted and loved by our caregivers. If we are not conforming, complying, we could be abandoned and so forth. So we need to, in order to survive, act a certain way.
That one, just pause your question there. Don't forget your question.
Okay.
I think we conform and comply as children because our caregivers, they need our acceptance, not the other way around. They need to know that we're good little boys and good little girls, and they want to be proud of us and wheel us out and show us off to their community and their friends and their family. It actually has very little to do with us.
Well, right. They need to be encouraged to not abandon their kids, right? So, well, it's encouraged.
Allow their kids to be free. Allow a kid to express itself. That soul entity coming in as a unique soul being. But that's not okay, right. Being unique. You've got to conform to the mold. If you're unique, how on earth will your parents feel? They'll feel embarrassed and ashamed. So they'll make you conform within their culture. The sins of the father become the sins of the son, and so it carries on. We know that, right. That story. Yeah.
So
carry on with your question.
So the question is, well, this conformance and compliance is occurring through childhood for people for these different reasons, but then it seems like in the history of civilization, there was always a period where the wise people of that community would then tell these children in their rite of passage that time of conformance and compliance. I don't know if they would use these terms, but that's over. You are now an authorized sovereign being, and you need to start taking responsibility for yourself. And so there was a time when children going through their growing pains had to take on, the burden of responsibility, but we just don't have that anymore. So there's never been.
Those rituals are really important. However, in that as well, what I see is that the one giving the instruction to say, you've now gone from boyhood to manhood, for example, you need to take on that responsibility. What I'm actually hearing them say is you need to emulate and repeat the things I've told you of how you should behave, because that makes you a good man. You're conforming, compliant to society. So almost that ritual there, and this is getting into maybe dangerous territory, I don't know, is saying, I am satisfied that you are a good little automon now, that you're a nice, compliant little being, and I'm satisfied that you've been sufficiently brainwashed that you can now go and brainwash others to conform and comply as well. That's the one hand. The other hand, ritual, of course, is incredibly important in recognizing and honoring different rites of passage of who we are as people. It's just kind of, it's an interesting, what do you call that thing? Paradox sitting there.
Well, I would say the potential for that kind of cultish indoctrination that you're describing is obviously there. And, that does happen, but it would be dependent on the maturity and wisdom elder, right? So if the person doing, like, conducting the rite of passage is wise, then they wouldn't want someone to just follow the rules. They didn't, there would be an encouragement to express yourself and be honest and, connect to the divine and all that.
Yeah, and I agree. Looking at the stuff behind you there on the wall, the didgeridoo and things like that, that would be that indigenous wisdom. And from that, I absolutely agree with you there. However, as your audience here are more Westerners, or people of the mind, not people of the spirit. It's be aware of that, of who's doing the ritual and what reason. For what it's worth, of course, these massive, expensive weddings, huge ritual, where the bride and groom have got actually no say. And we're seeing here in Mexico, massively expensive weddings, up to, for heaven's sakes, there's one here, what's the one happening in Saudi Arabia or somewhere in the Middle East, $500 million spent on a wedding. Can you imagine the pressure on that bride and groom to conform and comply so those, when I say those rituals, who are they for? And that's the extremes. Whereas you've got didgeridoo there, and that'll be an elder teaching, I presume, his student or his benefactor how to invoke spirit within and from around him. It's a very different. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, also that's the thing, I guess, is that I wouldn't I would almost encourage someone to go through any form of rite of passage, even if the person leading it was not the just because of that the importance of taking on responsibility. Now, but I guess the way I'm even describing it excludes that, because if I were to conduct a rite of passage for somebody and tell them how to be and think, that has nothing to do with being personally responsible, right? So the rite of passage itself is embedded in it, if it's actually a passage, is to confer.
Yeah, you're breaking up a bit here, Michael. So I'm just trying to go with it. Yeah, I hear what you say, and I agree with what you say there. It's the intention of the person leading the ceremony is really important.
I mean, I would say that's kind of, in the beginning, but your position of mentorship with me, in years past, it was, I wouldn't say it was like particularly formal, and yet there was always the theme of, I'm helping you not because I want to create a power dynamic between us, but because it's important for you to become strong yourself. And that the final part of that is not to ever say, now I'm sitting here and you're sitting right underneath me, as much as now we're friends and we can be friends and we can be equals. And I think that that's like one of the hallmarks of a healthy and wise relationship, with when there is that power difference, is not that you ever want to maintain it, but that you want it to become equal.
Thank you for recognizing that. And, because you were inherently a lazy person, you were very human, and you found me incredibly irritating more often than not, because I would hold you accountable to your laziness. And you do everything in your power to try and justify and defend your laziness, until eventually you couldn't defend it any longer, and then you took responsibility. And that is when you became integrated with who you truly are, your true power. This stuff takes work. It's not easy stuff.
Right.
You know that. You've been through it. It's not easy stuff. It's uncomfortable. But no one said it's going to be comfortable. We don't incarnate into a little cushy place necessarily.
And that's one of the things I think, to be really sympathetic with people, is that that sense of laziness is always sabotaged by the fear of that wounding that's under the surface, you know. So like just outright, well, you're being lazy, you're not doing your work. I think that that embedded in that laziness is like, if I do this work, I'm going to have to face this thing about how I feel about my parents, how I feel about myself, and that deep fear is then it like, oh well, no, that's not important, I'll just put that off, or you know, forget about it.
Yeah, so I like the Toltec teachings around that, which is the island of the known, the unknown, and the unknowable. That we become very comfortable in the island of the known, our known world, our relationship with our parents, with our siblings, our relationship around us. We know our relationship with technology. We know all the stuff we know. We know a huge amount. However, it gets to a point where this no longer serves us. There's that calling, going back to your original question, what motivated me to write Your Return to Freedom? There was that calling. And every single person will go through that at some point in their life, some louder than others, but we all go through that as being part of being human. And when that calling's there, what it's calling us to do is to take the risk to step into the unknown, to put away that comfortable place of the known world and go into the unknown. And in that, when we answer that calling, it can be a very terrifying thing, because as you're aware, there's the Toltec has the expression for that. It's called the loneliest place on earth. When we literally take our little stick with our little bundle of stuff on the back of it, and we walk out of our village and have no idea when we're returning. And it takes that courage. But when we do that, without fail, and invariably, I've never not seen this happen, is we are supported by spirit. Courage is rewarded. Laziness is not rewarded. Courage is rewarded, and teachers, mentors, books, movies, who knows what, suddenly all manifests out of, where did that come from? How did that arrive? And it's almost can be overwhelming sometimes, the amount of love and the amount of support one gets.